Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Ashlie Stapp? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing you by this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Ashlie Nicole Stapp was born sometime around 1991 and lived in San Bernardino County, California. She worked at a Jamba Juice. When Ashlie was 23, she injured her hip and was prescribed narcotics. She became dependent on the drugs and purchased them from people who sold them illegally. By 2016 or 2017, Ashlie had a $600 a day drug habit. Her earnings at Jamba Juice were insufficient to cover this amount. Ashlie went to great lengths to access the drugs despite not having enough money. For example, she would steal them, borrow them, and exchange sex for them. Ashlie had multiple sexual partners who fulfilled this purpose. Using Craigslist to find more sources of drugs, Ashlie met a man named Henry Allen Stange. He lived in a house in Murrieta, California, and was in the process of a divorce. He had 2 children. Henry Stange was a strange individual. He was extremely active with ham radio and disrupted the community quite a bit with his controversial statements. Henry had been in a motorcycle collision which left him disabled and in chronic pain. He took several medications, including oxycodone. Ashlie obtained this drug from Henry by purchasing it and by exchanging sex. One could argue that this arrangement made them strange bedfellows. In 2017, Ashlie met a man named Curtis Krueger, who was just a few years older than her. Curtis was in the Marines. He was stationed at the Marine Corps Air-Ground Combat Center, which is also known as 29 Palms. He enlisted at the age of 17, earned his bachelor's degree, and then became an officer. Curtis was attracted to Ashlie, and they became romantic partners. Ashlie allowed Curtis to believe that they were in an exclusive relationship, and they even talked about getting married, but she was living a double life. She was still seeing Henry and maintaining a sexual relationship with him. Over time, Curtis started to grow concerned about Ashlie's substance use behavior. Specifically, she was failing to regulate her intake of alcohol. On one occasion, after Ashlie drank heavily, she disappeared. She was later found passed out in her vehicle in the desert. Curtis asked Ashlie to share her location data from her cell phone. This way he could locate her if she became lost again. Ashlie agreed and granted him access. During a family gathering in January 2018, Curtis looked at Ashlie's phone and noticed that Henry had sent her an email. Curtis sent Henry an email telling him to leave Ashlie alone or he would regret it. A few days later, Ashlie turned off her phone, which prevented Curtis from locating her. This became a habit with Ashlie, and it was frustrating to Curtis. He became suspicious and wondered if Ashlie and Henry were having sex. On January 22, 2018, Curtis lost track of Ashlie after she turned her phone off. When she reactivated her phone later, he saw that she was at a convenience store not far from the residence of Henry Stange. Curtis confronted her and learned about how she was exchanging sex for drugs. Ashlie distorted the nature of her relationship with Henry to make Henry look as if he was taking advantage of her. This sent Curtis into a rage. Curtis and Ashlie drove to Henry's house. As Ashlie waited in the vehicle, Curtis entered the house and struck Henry in the head with a hammer. Curtis came back to the vehicle and explained to Ashlie how he had done something bad. He eventually disposed of the hammer in the desert. It had actually been bent out of shape from slamming into Henry's head. The next day, Ashlie went back to Henry's house because she was worried about him. It was clear that Henry had been hurt badly. He was bleeding from his ear and appeared to have a concussion. Henry never notified the police, and he did not know who attacked him. He never realized that it was Curtis. To Henry, the attack only hammered home this idea that the ham radio community was angry with him. He thought that one of them had come to drop the hammer on him. In order to protect himself, Henry installed surveillance cameras all around his house. Even though Curtis had confirmed his suspicions about Ashley's infidelity and had seriously injured her lover, he decided to remain in the relationship. His paranoia grew out of control, and he became obsessed with tracking Ashley's whereabouts. He forwarded emails from her account to his own, made her delete every male contact in her cell phone, and made a record of her movements. Ashlie did not want to be tracked. She lied about where she was going, and she resumed the habit of turning off her phone. In April 2018, with his suspicions at an all-time high, Curtis decided it was time to get engaged to Ashlie. In his way of thinking, this made sense. It would somehow magically solve their problems through some unknown and non-existent mechanism. Despite being newly engaged, Ashlie wasn't ready to give up Henry. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On May 23, 2018, Henry invited Ashlie to a party with him and his friend, oxycodone. The next day, May 24, Ashlie drove to her mother's house, left her cell phone in a houseplant, and drove to Henry's house. Ashlie and Henry used oxycodone and had sex. Curtis became concerned that Ashlie was up to no good. He drove to the house of Ashley's mother and found Ashley's cell phone in the houseplant. At this point, he decided to go to Henry's house, thinking that she might be there. Curtis arrived at about 5:20 p.m. Ashlie was in the bathroom of Henry's house, and Henry was in the garage, communicating on his ham radio. He had the garage door open, as was his habit. Ashlie heard a wrestling noise from the garage, followed by the sound of Henry screaming. At this point, Curtis entered the house and told Ashlie that he had done something bad, and it was time for them to go. As Curtis and Ashlie left through the garage door, Ashlie saw Henry on the floor. At this point, he was seriously injured or dead. The couple drove away, but then returned later to clean up the crime scene. Ashlie took Henry's oxycodone as Curtis removed the surveillance cameras. They loaded Henry into Curtis's pickup truck. The couple then drove to the desert and buried Henry's body in a shallow grave. On June 1, 2018, two hikers noticed vultures flying over an area of Joshua Tree National Park. They made a report the next day, and the authorities found Henry's body. He had sustained multiple blunt force injuries on his head. It didn't take long for the police to figure out what happened and who was responsible. They set up a wiretap and heard Ashlie and Curtis talking about the crime. The couple was arrested in 2019. Ashlie was offered a plea bargain and eventually pleaded guilty in connection with being an accessory after the fact. She was sentenced to 180 days in a substance use treatment facility. Curtis was charged with assault with a deadly weapon for the hammer attack on January 22 and murder for the attack on May 24. Ultimately, he was convicted. Curtis Krueger received 3 years in prison for the assault conviction and 15 years to life in prison for the second-degree murder conviction. The sentences are to run consecutively. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. At his trial, Curtis claimed that he overreacted when he attacked Henry with the hammer. As far as the murder charge, Curtis claimed that Henry attacked him with a knife and he was just defending himself. Curtis managed to get the upper hand during the attack and only fled the scene because he was worried Henry was going to come after him. He didn't contact the police because Ashlie convinced him not to. Curtis essentially blamed both Henry and Ashlie and took no blame himself. At his sentencing, Curtis tried to argue that he was simply trying to defend Ashlie from Henry's destructive power. The judge believed that Curtis was simply jealous and murdered a romantic rival in a rage. Item number 2. Investigators believe that Henry was still alive when he was loaded into the pickup truck at his house. Because of this, Ashlie was initially charged with kidnapping, but the charge was dismissed under her deal with the state. Some people were furious over the generosity of this plea bargain. I think a good argument can be made that Ashlie was more responsible than her conviction indicates. Ashlie knew that Curtis was the one who attacked Henry with the hammer, but she did not warn Henry. She was aware that Henry thought of her as a girlfriend. He even introduced her this way to several people, including his ex-wife, his children, his neighbors, and fellow ham radio enthusiasts. Ashlie admitted to manipulating Henry in order to get drugs. When Curtis fatally attacked Henry, Ashlie did not call the police. Rather, she assisted in a haphazard cleanup effort. She even took Henry's medication. Maybe she figured he wouldn't be needing it anymore and would not want it to go to waste. After Ashlie was sent to the substance use treatment facility, she was accused of violating a number of the rules, including fraternizing with male participants, trading clothing, failing to complete paperwork, leaving her drawer unlocked, and having contraband. She was sent to jail as a result. Ashlie was offered the plea bargain of the century, yet could not even follow basic rules while receiving treatment. Item number 3. When Ashlie was having sex with both Curtis and Henry, she would make it seem as though Henry had committed serious offenses against her. She tried to play the victim. When Ashlie was arrested, she implicated Curtis in the murder and supplied the police with the location of the hammer used in the January attack. Once again, Ashlie was the victim. Both Curtis and Henry believed that they were in a romantic relationship with Ashlie, but the truth is, Ashlie had another lover who superseded both of them, namely drugs. It was all about Ashlie chasing the next high. That's all that mattered to her. There is the sense that Ashlie had no appreciation for consequences at all. It was just by pure luck that she ended up getting a lighter sentence. Item number 4. Both Henry and Curtis engaged in self-deception and misunderstood their relationship with Ashlie. Henry was completely infatuated with Ashlie. He talked about their love affair to anyone who would listen. He frequently mentioned her on his ham radio broadcasts. Henry told people that Ashlie was everything he ever wanted in a woman. It was like Henry had become dependent on Ashlie to keep his self-esteem elevated. Similarly, Curtis believed that Ashlie was just about perfect for him. He had this system of matching himself to potential partners. He determined that Ashlie was a 94.8% match. He said, quote, "She literally seems perfect," unquote. Before getting involved with Ashlie, Curtis was warned that she was promiscuous and used substances. After the relationship started, he knew that she was cheating on him and using drugs, but he was unwilling to walk away. It was like Curtis was addicted to Ashlie. No matter what she did, he couldn't give her up. Now moving to my final thoughts. This case is really about the power of addiction and how people can be dependent on many different things. Ashlie was dependent on substances. She prioritized drugs above everything else. Henry was dependent on drugs, but also dependent on Ashlie. His relationship with her made him feel fulfilled, like he had everything he needed. Curtis was dependent on Ashlie and desired to dominate and control her. He viewed her as just about a perfect match, and he could not let go of her, no matter what. Everyone in the story was addicted to something they could not control. Two of them were addicted to someone who would ultimately destroy them. As is often the case, the individual with the strongest addiction to substances and the weakest connection to people ended up victorious. Ashlie was a proverbial train wreck who barely looked back at all the carnage that she caused in her life. One man who loved her is dead, another is in prison, and yet Ashlie may not be done carving her trail of destruction. Those are my thoughts on the case of Ashlie Stapp. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.